The era of proper rivalry in the NBA is back. And this time, it's not just drama, it's full-blown hatred. Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren are at war, and they are about to shake the league to its core. After a recent showdown, Wemby didn't hold back. He fired a shot at Chet Holmgren.
You know, some people are built for these moments, some aren't, but we definitely are, and it shows.
And Holmgren clapped back like it was nothing.
We're fighting.
Right. Honestly, don't even know the guy. Like, we just play basketball against each other.
Today, I'm breaking down everything. How this tension exploded into outright hate, the moments that fueled it, the games, the comments, and the behind-the-scenes moves that no one saw coming. It's gotten so intense that even legends like Dirk Nowitzki had to step in. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have your jaw dropped. Let's start right from when everything exploded. When Victor Wembanyama walked onto the court in that Spurs Thunder NBA Cup semifinal, it looked like just another big game. But it was different.
Wembanyama at the elbow, watched by Caruso. Wembanyama got it back, fires, and it drops!
This was his first meaningful action in weeks after a calf injury kept him out of a dozen games and the entire league was watching. It wasn't just another return. It was the moment everyone knew he had to prove something, not just about his body, but about the narrative around him. The OKC Thunder were riding a 16-game winning streak. They sat near the top of the standings, and they had all the momentum. And because of that, when Wemby hit the floor, it felt like he was carrying two franchises' worth of pressure on his shoulders. From the very first minutes he was in the game, Wembanyama's presence changed the rhythm. The Spurs had struggled early, and the Spurs head coach kept him on a minutes restriction, limiting him to about 20 minutes. That meant every second Wemby was on the court had weight. Not because he was rusty, but because he knew this was the moment opinions about him would shift if he played like he believed he belonged. The stats back this up. Wembanyama had 22 points and 9 rebounds, and to make it more obvious, the Spurs outscored the Thunder by 21 points while he was on the court. But what made this clash feel different than a normal return wasn't just the numbers. It was how Wemby interacted with the guy he had been compared to since the day he arrived in the league, Chet Holmgren. There was no communication between them, and they operated in the same space but didn't acknowledge each other. Well, until one moment late in the fourth quarter. With the Thunder pushing the ball, Holmgren caught it on the wing and elevated for a mid-range jumper. The ball bounced off the rim, and before the ball even hit the ground, the broadcast immediately cut to Wembanyama. And instead of just continuing the game, Wemby's face lit up with what some people described online as a flash of joy, not celebration for his team's situation, but something that looked like he hoped for Holmgren to miss that shot.
Bound against is going to be big in this game.
Holmgren now 9 for 11 at the free.
He is very, very heavy.
That's after the missed Chet free throw.
And it wasn't just that one possession. Over the course of the game, anytime the ball swung to Chet in a position that might challenge Wembanyama, pick and rolls, mid-range floaters, even defensive switches, Wembanyama's body language shifted. There was a lot more intensity, an extra edge. He wasn't just playing the game, he was asserting dominance.
In the day, the post-up for the big was on a low block. Now the post-up for a big like Wemby is at the high elbow.
Here's this matchup, Wembanyama!
If you saw the whole match unfold, from Wemby's first tip-in, to him grabbing key rebounds, pushing the pace, hitting clutch free throws, and displaying that mix of confidence and power, you could see that this wasn't just about leading a comeback. This was about saying without words, I am the alpha in this moment. And every time Holmgren tried to assert himself, Wembanyama seemed to respond with a quiet, almost personal challenge. And here's where things start to get messy off the court. It started with a post-game interview that dropped like a grenade. Wembanyama was asked what he and Chet Holmgren bring out in each other when they match up. You would think he'd talk about Holmgren's length, his shooting, the way he guards the rim. Instead, Wemby pivoted to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the reigning MVP, and went all in on the idea that anyone is difficult to guard when you have to help on the MVP.
This feels like one of the true NBA rivalries. What do you force each other to tap into?
The MVP is in that court, the reigning MVP, so he is our main focus. Anybody is hard to guard when you have to help on the MVP.
Wembanyama didn't just avoid giving Holmgren credit. He sidestepped him entirely and made it sound like Holmgren only looks good because he plays next to one of the league's most lethal scorers. That's where Dirk Nowitzki stepped in, and honestly, the reaction was funnier than you'd expect. Now, Dirk is normally the calm, respectful voice of reason, right? But even he couldn't let this slide. He essentially said Wembanyama's answer was too dismissive. He didn't say Wemby was wrong about Shai, but he implied that avoiding recognition of Holmgren altogether felt unnecessary.
I didn't love that answer. To me, it's too swaggy, too dismissive of Chet. But hey, they might have something going, and can't wait. Get the popcorn out.
Too swaggy?
Then there's Lou Williams, who came at Wembanyama from a completely different angle. Lou was like, if you're going to drop something bold, don't leave people guessing. Say who you mean.
I like the fact that he's shaking the tree. Shake the tree as much as you can. However, put an address on it. Don't send a subliminal to Chet. Don't send a subliminal to SGA.
He said the "some people aren't built for this" comment in the other interview could have been about anyone, but leaving it open was a childish move. Basically, Lou was calling Wemby out for being mysterious instead of owning it. And of course, the analysts had their own little debate. Paul Pierce straight up said Chet is better due to his versatility, IQ, and team impact. Kevin Garnett fired back, saying Wemby's size, skill, and dominance make him the one to beat.
Right now, he's playing better than Wemby. Right now,
I can't say that.
Right
his
now,
team
today,
looks better than
I'm talking
Wemby's.
about individual-wise.
Did you see what the boy was doing? Man, Wemby, the alien from the third dimension. Yeah, he came across Have. It's like, yeah, give my Steph Curry. Yeah.
The back and forth was insane, like a mini debate special, and fans online were losing it. Some agreed with Dirk, some with Lou, some with KG, and some with Pierce. So by the time the Spurs Thunder buzz was at its peak, the beef wasn't just a rumor anymore. Legends had weighed in, analysts were split, fans were in full discussion mode, and Wemby's subtle moves, on and off the court, were now being read like chapters of a personal vendetta. But all the reactions only scratch the surface. If you want to really understand why Victor Wembanyama seems to have this, let's call it hatred towards Chet Holmgren and what he represents, you've got to go back to the beginning. Not the hype videos or draft night interviews, but where he was actually forged, Europe. And I'm not talking Disneyland Europe, I mean the no-fluff, grind every drill, nothing is given European basketball machine. This is the kind of system where if you mess up a shot in practice, someone's already making notes and someone else is being promoted. Wemby grew up in a super athletic household, with parents who weren't just casual athletes, but serious pros. His mom coached and his dad ran track at a national level, so from day one, good enough didn't exist. By the time he hit his early teens, Wemby was living in team dorms, training every day, balancing school, traveling for games, and basically learning that the world doesn't care about potential. Only results mattered. And the thing is, he had loads of potential, but he wasn't getting coddled. Coaches criticized, his peers were ruthless, and every evaluation felt like a spotlight on whether he belonged or not. Can you imagine being 14, living away from home, and feeling like every single drill is a judgment on your entire future? Yeah, that's what made him unshakable. Fast forward a few years, and he's a global prospect before he even had control of his own narrative. Everyone's talking about his wingspan, his shot, his defensive IQ, but he was still just a kid trying to survive the system. He didn't get fame handed to him, he earned every single ounce of attention. And then, the Spurs took him first overall in 2023. Now, when they get drafted into the NBA, most rookies think they're walking into a dream, not Wemby. He was walking into a team that was rebuilding from the ground up. And guess what? The entire narrative of Spurs rising was on his shoulders. Every loss was tied back to him, and he was credited for every win. And here's where things get even crazier: injuries. In November, Wembanyama was diagnosed with a rare blood clot in his shoulder, and just like that, his season was over. Most players in that situation might get a headline or two about what could have been, maybe a little sympathy from fans. But Wemby didn't sit around feeling sorry for himself. He went full-on beast mode, training harder than ever, doing meditative exercises to sharpen his focus and rehabilitating like his career depended on it. Because, well, it did. He wasn't looking for excuses, he wasn't looking for pity. He turned that setback into fuel and came back even stronger. So now that you understand the world Wembanyama came from, the grind, the chaos, the pressure, the injuries, and the constant cycle of proving he belonged, it starts to make sense why Chet Holmgren triggers him like nothing else. Because Holmgren's rise tells almost the exact opposite story. Where Wemby had to survive every obstacle to earn respect, Holmgren seemed to be handed a runway straight to the spotlight. Chet Holmgren's path through basketball is almost the textbook version of a smooth rise. He wasn't just a top prospect. He was the top prospect in multiple recruiting classes. From his early days at Minnehaha Academy in Minnesota, he dominated at every level, leading his team to national recognition and catching the attention of scouts with a mix of height, skill, and seemingly effortless IQ. Analysts constantly highlighted him as efficient, smart, and safe. They viewed Holmgren as the kind of player who makes the simple, correct play more often than not, the kind NBA systems love, and that's the difference between his and Wembanyama's rugged path. From high school to college, Holmgren's development happened inside structure, not chaos. The program he was in prioritized player protection and gradual exposure, rather than testing him in truly high-pressure, high-risk scenarios. He was polished before he even got to the NBA. Compare that to Wemby, whose European path threw him into games where missing a single defensive rotation could ruin his entire tournament. One relied on structure, the other survived storm after storm. Once he was drafted by the Thunder in 2022, Holmgren walked into a team that was already built to succeed. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had established himself as a superstar, Jalen Williams was on the rise, and the roster had a clear winning system. Holmgren wasn't carrying the franchise, he was just fitting into it. Then there was the injury. Holmgren's rookie season was cut short by a foot injury, which is supposed to be a big setback by NBA standards. But here's the thing, the Thunder handled it with patience, support, and careful reintegration. No media frenzy demanding he immediately prove himself. No fan panic over losses tied to his absence. But Wemby's injuries came with public pressure, internal doubt, and scrutiny that never let him off the hook. When Holmgren returned, it was almost like they were setting it all up for him. The Thunder were already on fire, and he slid right back into a winning formula. His stats were solid, his defense impactful, and the team's success masked any issues or struggles. Wemby's path was the opposite. He returned from injury and was immediately the focal point of media narratives because the success of his team depended on him. So it's easy to see why Wemby reacts the way he does on the court and in interviews. Holmgren was allowed to grow, while being protected, celebrated, and nurtured in an environment that prioritized his development while shielding him from chaos. Wemby was thrown into the deep end from age 14, had to fight for every inch, and learned early that survival and respect are earned the hard way. To Wembanyama, Holmgren embodies a version of greatness that didn't earn its scars. Wemby respects struggle and suffers through it. Holmgren, by design and circumstance, did not. That difference, more than anything, shapes the silent tension between them. But all the stuff we just talked about isn't just on both of them. It was fueled by the NBA media machine long before either guy ever said a harsh word to the other. Honestly, you've got to see how the league, reporters, and social media relentlessly compared Wembanyama and Holmgren from day one. Go all the way back to 2023 and the draft cycle. Wembanyama was the #1 overall pick, and Chet Holmgren was right behind him at #2. Just seeing two 7-foot unicorns go back-to-back made the NBA world tentatively hyped. But what turned that into pressure on Wemby was how the media and analysts framed them in the same breath every single time. Every draft board, every top 100 NBA prospects graphic, every YouTube comparison video had their names side by side, as if they were two halves of a single storyline instead of two separate careers.
I never said Chet was better than Wemby.
Don't piss me off.
Did I ever say Chet was better than Wemby? I said defensively, for one, it's closer. I didn't like Wemby just getting by far and away defensive player of the year.
He's winning it.
That might seem harmless, but here's the thing. Wemby never asked for this. Nobody wants to be compared this much to someone else, at least not this early in their career, and definitely not someone who had it way easier. And it didn't stop after the draft. In 2023 and into 2024, every match they played became the matchup. ESPN, NBA analysts, and every sports news outlet all ran pieces questioning who was the better next great big man. In their first real head-to-head regular season game on November 14, 2023, what everyone had hyped up as the beginnings of a Wemby-Chet rivalry didn't exactly produce fireworks on the scoreboard. Both guys just had what you'd call off nights. Wembanyama scored only 8 points on 4 for 15 shooting and grabbed 14 boards, while Holmgren finished with 9 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. These were solid, but it wasn't that crazy. Neither player dominated, and they rarely even switched onto each other one-on-one that night. the Spurs ended up losing big, 123-87, and afterward, both guys pretty much shrugged off the matchup. But here's where it gets interesting. Even though the game itself didn't ignite a classic superstar beef, reporters immediately led with how everyone had been linking these two slender 7-foot big guys together for months, and that's what became the headline. Suddenly, a fairly ordinary performance was repackaged as proof that the Wemby versus Chet storyline was real and ongoing. Then analysts took it even further online. People on social platforms and podcasts started pulling up things like the Rookie of the Year race, where Wembanyama ended up winning unanimously, but Holmgren was literally second place by 1 vote in 2024. What's crazy is that Wembanyama never asked for this comparison. In early games, he said straight up, he didn't even think about Holmgren that way. But the fans, reporters, and NBA Twitter kept bringing it up over and over, until the constant noise became an invisible pressure on Wembanyama himself. But when you actually start looking at the stats and numbers, you see that this rivalry between Wembanyama and Holmgren never made sense on paper. But that's exactly why it got twisted into something personal. Because the stats tell a story that doesn't match what the media says, and to Wembanyama, that mismatch feels like an insult. Let's start with the basics: career averages and totals. Over the span of their NBA careers up to this point, Wembanyama has had the edge in virtually every major counting stat. He's averaging roughly 22.9 points per game to Holmgren's 16.5, and 11 rebounds to Holmgren's 8. He's also averaging about 3.8 assists per game compared to Holmgren's 2.2, and he racks up more blocks too. A stat Wemby has been elite at since day one. If you go deeper, even head-to-head regular season matchups say the same thing. In 5 games against Chet, Wembanyama's averaged about 17.6 points, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.4 assists, which is really solid, considering it was against a prime OKC Thunder roster. But here's where the narrative gets weird. You look at shooting efficiency, and it gets more complicated. Holmgren's career shooting splits are generally stronger in efficiency categories. His effective field goal percentage and three-point percentages have been higher at certain points, which feeds the efficient tag that analysts love to throw around. Meanwhile, Wembanyama's efficiency has varied more because the Spurs lean on him as a primary option, which often forces him into tough shots, creative plays, contested threes, and isolated possessions. That's why a lot of efficiency metrics look lower for him compared to Holmgren, who slots into an offense that makes it easier for him. But with all this, what do we hear in the media? Wembanyama gets labeled as raw, chaotic, and inconsistent, even in years where he averaged a triple-double threat across blocks, rebounds, and points. Meanwhile, Holmgren gets words like efficient, reliable, and winning, especially when Oklahoma City is stacking wins around him. To Wembanyama, someone who grew up respecting the grind, that feels like moving goalposts. You've got two guys at similar stages in their careers with overlapping stat lines and overlapping impact, but one is praised for being dependable and efficient, while the other is criticized for being unpolished. And to make things worse, Holmgren responded to Wemby, or more accurately, he brushed him off, which somehow made the tension explode even more. Holmgren was asked about Wemby in a post-game interview, and he basically shrugged, smiling like it didn't even matter, and said this.
We're fighting. We honestly don't even know the guy. Like, we just play basketball against each other.
That dismissive attitude, combined with years of media comparisons, opposing development paths, and all the subtle ways Holmgren's career has been cushioned compared to Wemby's grind, means every interaction carries a little extra weight. And when you step back and look at the history of the NBA, you realize just how rare and almost unprecedented this is. See, most NBA beefs fall into one clear category. Some are about contemporaries at the same position, like LeBron James versus Carmelo Anthony in 2003. Others are straight superstar versus superstar competitions fueled by personal trash talk or playoff battles. Some even revolve around cultural or ideological clashes. Usually, one or two of those boxes get checked, and that's enough to make sparks fly. But for Wembanyama, they hit almost every one of those categories, and this is happening before either of them has even played a full, uninterrupted season. Take LeBron and Melo, for example. They were drafted in the same class, constantly compared, but in completely different team situations. LeBron was framed as the ultimate winner, Melo as pure raw dominance. And despite all the media chatter, there was mutual respect. LeBron never publicly questioned whether Melo deserved his place in the league, Or look at Kobe Bryant versus Tracy McGrady in the early 2000s. Kobe openly questioned T-Mac's mental toughness, but even Kobe acknowledged T-Mac's skill. Criticism was competitive, not erasing. But Wemby and Chet don't even criticize each other. They refuse to validate each other at all. The closest to this case, emotionally and psychologically, might be Shaquille O'Neal versus Dwight Howard. And even that isn't a perfect comparison. Shaq publicly questioned Dwight's legitimacy and dismissed Dwight repeatedly. But Shaq's resentment came after years in the league when Dwight was already established. With Wemby and Chet, that same dynamic is happening at the very foundation of their careers. And it's fueled not just by results, but by identity. Wemby is essentially saying, "You weren't built for this. You don't belong. And I'll make sure everyone sees it." There has never been an NBA beef where two players were fused by media hype before even really proving themselves head-to-head, where one openly questions whether the other even deserves their spot, where the enmity emerges before playoff battles, and where the resentment is rooted in identity rather than just statistics. Even after all the hype, all the games, all the stats, this isn't something that's going to fade with time. This isn't about Wemby or Chet growing up, maturing, or suddenly learning to play nice. This is deeper. It's about identity. Wembanyama measures greatness by how much chaos you survive, and how much pressure you carry, and how much you've earned every inch of your reputation. And Holmgren represents a path that Wemby sees as curated, a journey that didn't forge him in the fire. So don't expect this to slow down. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Wembanyama is valid in the way he sees this, or is this all just overblown? And who do you think will come out on top? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, this conversation is far from over.